kids, ages like 35 down to 26 or 7 now. And all these kids are doing, I think by the world's standards, pretty well. And what I mean by that is it's things like they're all married. They all went to college. They all paid for their college, actually. They all, I'm asking you if this sounds good, by the way. So we'll see if that works. But they're all in college, or rather got out. They paid for college. They all have jobs. They all have bought homes. They are all engaged in something civically. Most all of them are in church. One couple, his work and busyness, they're very oriented towards spiritual things, teaching their kids stuff, but not quite engaged in church. They were in the pandemic, threw them off, and we trust they'll get back to that. But the other four are very, very involved in their churches. They're all creative and active and organized. We just went on a vacation. We had 23 people in a house we rented, a large house. But, you know, it's so neatly organized, and meals and life. I didn't hear conflicts. I didn't hear fights. I didn't hear battles. And everything got done. Everybody was fine. Nobody got hurt. No child, 11 grandchildren, ages 11 and down. I mean, 6 and down. Grampy, so long I got hurt. I cut my hand, fishing, knife, stuff like that. So the question would come up, why have we had these kind of results? And honestly, the results we've had have been a blessing, and we're a little bit surprised. It's what we hoped for. Doesn't mean that there aren't challenges with health and life, and there are some relational things, etc. But everybody pretty much is doing great, and they all still like each other. So how'd that happen? That's what I want to talk to you about. First, I've got to say, no guarantees in this world. It could have easily have been that it didn't work at all. That is certainly a true possibility. There is no guarantee that if you do things right, things turn out right. That's not a thing in this world. But it is how you bet. That's what wisdom's about. You know, like if you're betting on boxing, the biggest and the baddest doesn't always win. But that's how you bet. And you want to keep that in mind. Well, as I was thinking this through, why exactly? What's the deal? And what dawned on me was the deal is our philosophy, the way we thought about things. And I've got to tell you, some of this came out of our religious beliefs. So as a pastor, not trying to promote anything, but I'm saying what was going in my mind was, as a pastor and an elder in a church and taking scripture seriously, there are places in like First Timothy and Titus, really and elsewhere, but they talk about qualifications. Okay. And one of the qualifications that comes up is that a person that serves in that capacity of a pastor, elder, needs to be able to manage his own household. And as I've thought about that, managing the household, I think that is a big piece to what really worked for us or made sense for us. And so when I say something like managing, I'm talking about leadership. Sometimes people make a distinction between leaders and managers, but I think managers have to lead and leaders have to manage. So I don't think of it that way. But in managing your own home, what you have to do is have some kind of leadership structure. So let me talk to you about leadership really quickly. So leadership, the way I understand it, has 3 components. There's persuasion, there's progress, and there's a place to go to. So leaders are really, they're kind of answering the questions why and how and where. So you want a place to get to. So in your homeschool, how do you want this to turn out? And then you need a process. That's what we talk about. The processes we build from different curriculum or curricula like Robinson, et cetera. But in understanding that particular game, and the how is obviously how you do it. the process, excuse me, the why is the persuasion, and the where is the place trying to get to. So these things come into leadership, and leadership is about this orientation to a better place. And in understanding that, what that means is for leaders to function, they actually have people that are following them, who are obeying them, who are doing what they want them to do. And I think that's the trick. Like, if you don't have a leader, you don't have leadership. If two people are in charge, no one's in charge. You have to have a single leader. Two captains can't steer a ship. Well, let's say it this way. If they can, one of them is necessary. If you drive across country, if you want misery in your car trip, have both people fighting for who gets to drive, rather than one's the main driver and one's the supportive driver. In our home, that in our orientation fell to me as the leader, and Jody as the second leader, but the supporter, the helper. This isn't a sexist type thing. It isn't exactly a biblical type thing. If you took all that away, Jody would tell you, she will if you ask her, that between the two of us, I'm going to wind up being the one that leads, and she's going to be supportive. That's the game. And because of that, then the responsibility that landed on me to manage the home and to make it function, make is an overstatement, but I was responsible for that. And Jody, in supporting me, was responsible to help implement strategies. Now, did I take her advice and counsel? Yeah. But were we battling at how we're going to run homeschool? For a little bit, we were. And then we sorted it out and we quit battling, and it went really well. So here's what I see in this world these days. I see these homes are somewhat leaderless, or more specifically, the kids are the ones leading. The parents are obeying the kids. The parents are trying to find out what the kids want. So things become a negotiation, and a child's upset. I was sharing this with someone this week I was working with, and I shared about how we got our last two sons to quit fighting. And I shared the idea that, I would have them write an essay why he's wrong and I'm right. And if we read the essays, whoever won would go downtown to Chewy's and eat tres leches, and the other would move rocks around the backyard, do some project. If they solve their own conflicts without bothering us every month, then they got a free day off from school. They could put in the bank whenever they want to use it. So that really worked. And this lady looked at me and she said, but what if your kids won't write an essay? And I said, well, this was our solution. But my kids would never have thought not to write an essay. I would have just said, all right, your life stops until you write the essay. Like, stops. We're not going to youth group or scouts, or we're not doing anything. Because I'm sitting there going, I'm not following or obeying my child, because that's not how I think, and they're not qualified for it. I want to get them to be happy adults. And so we have standards, and inside of our family, that means you're going to do your work, and you're going to improve, you're going to get better, and we're going to help you and cheer for you. I know you've got feelings. You can feel your feelings. Sometimes we'll help you sort out feelings. Sometimes you need to learn to manage them yourself. But fundamentally, it was understood that this is our home. We're going to do it our way. And you're in the home as a child, not in charge of the home. You get out, you can be your own leader of your own home, your own business, your own life, your own research facility, your own country, all that. Go for it. But for us, it worked in that way where mom and dad were in the leadership role. And between the two of them, one figured out who was going to, or the two figured out who's going to take the lead on this. And by the way, that can switch up. There are things that Jody does that I don't do leadership in. A lot of stuff in particular, just the two of us now. Meals, I don't do anything. I'm not leading in meals. I give feedback, but I'm not picking out, choosing. I'm not doing any of that. There are lots of other things she works with in a civic context. I don't have anything to do with that. Sometimes I'm an advisor. I do things with my business life, and she's not directing that. And I think if you could grasp that idea to settle that leadership issue, and once you settle that leadership issue, make sure, and I'm dead set on this, the kids are not the leaders. And you can tell if you're obeying your children, they're the leaders. If your children are obeying you, you're the leader. Nobody's obeying each other or anything. It's leaderless. And what you want to do is just figure out how to lead. And what leadership means is not forcing things, but inviting them in this direction. It does have consequences. It does have stuff happening. But honestly, it's not that game. So if your kids are in charge, I'm going to argue you're going to have a tough time really building the homeschool you want. If you can stop the negotiation, love your kids, but see getting ready, figure out the place you want to get them to, how you're going to do it and why. And even the persuasion is important. The why is important to win them to it. So I'd argue that the reason this happened, that a big part of what happened with us is that we got leadership issues settled, or management, and this orientation to have a well-run home, because that would prepare the kids for life to be happy adults. And now they're doing their own homes how they want to. I'm not in charge of their homes. There's some things they do I wouldn't do. There's some things they do I wish I had done. So there's the game. Anyway, I hope that is I hope that's helpful. So let's see, a hand raised. I don't know why, and I don't know what to do with it. It looks like I raised my own hand. But there's the idea. So what we're looking for now is any questions about that. I can give more clarity or examples. I'm happy to do that. But what we'd like is questions. I've got a few that I've collected a list of, so we'll probably answer some of them. But what we're wanting is from you, for you all to throw questions out for us. And we got people in Switzerland, which is awesome. And who knows where else. So here I'm going to jump in West Virginia, which I've been to many times. Brother has a place up there, so we hike a bit, Dolly Sods or something like that. So Heather throws out, I see a lot of younger generations raising their kids child-led, and it's quite hard for me as a children's director to lead their child in a Bible lesson or even in the nursery. Okay, that's not a question, but it's a statement, and it suggests some very clear questions like, so what do I do about that? Or maybe, Heather, you're not asking a question, you can clarify it. But honestly, that is, I think, a part of the challenge that we have. And here's a funny thing about leadership and following. If a person doesn't learn to follow, it's hard for them to figure out really how to lead, right? That's always a challenge. Sorry, trying to get this to work right. So it is very much that issue, very much that, the kids come home, they're used to leading in a certain context, but when you show up, you need to learn to follow. And they're not learning to follow. They need to learn to follow because they're going to have jobs, and they're going to have civic context. They're going to have serious situations. And what good leaders do, follow a better leader. And they get it, and they support them. They want the best person leading. There are many things, like when I was younger, I didn't have teenagers. And we would have issues in the church with teens that, families come in for help. And what would happen is one of the older guys who had teens would take the lead on that, one that I was always leading. So we mix up the leadership. But that is a challenge, but it needs to be understood even by the kids that when you're in this environment at church, you're doing what we want you to do. And what you have to do is kind of go to the parents and say, your child, can do what they want at home or anywhere else, but inside of here, we have to operate a certain way. And it's no different, like going on a ride. Let's just persuade them, a ride at Disneyland or Carnival or something like that. You have to obey the rules of the ride. Like you've got to sit in, they got to put that bar over you, and you can't you can't stand up, you can't jump out in the middle of the ride. Fortunately, you usually don't feel like it, but there are places we have to learn to obey the rules. When officers tell you to stop, put your hands on your head, do that. If you don't do that, bad things happen. If traffic lights say stop now, go now, we learn to follow that. This is part about having an orderly society. But honestly, I think, it's going to have to be that the parents need to understand that there's a group of kids here and we're trying to develop them, but we need their help in getting their child to understand that they're not getting to lead or get that way or get everybody to obey them in that context. But I do think we're in kind of a child-centered world, that it's all about the children. And that's not really that smart because they're not qualified, Plus, when they grow up and they have children, they're suddenly going to give up their self-orientation. That's not going to happen. So it's a recipe, if I can say it that way, for disaster. So there's the rub. What other questions do you have? We're obviously on YouTube. Jody's going to come in just a second. And as you throw questions out, I'm going to throw this chat. If you'd like to come talk personally on our Zoom, that would be awesome. Password is that. So let's see what we've got. Let's get Jody in here first of all. And be still. I think I can turn this.
Morning.
So I didn't tell you this. Can you come in closer at all? Not closer. Come in closer to me.
Our chairs are bumping each other.
And I've got a bulky chair. Part of the challenge, right? Get us set. All right, close enough. So what I was talking about was one of the reasons I think things have turned out pretty well for our kids is because I took that seriously about managing your household, like deacons and elders and that kind of stuff. And so we wrestled with and solved about management, and that we wanted to have a well-managed home because we wanted to prepare the kids for life, for the future, to be happy adults. And like I said, this isn't a sexist thing, but between any two people, somebody's got to figure out who's going to drive the most in the car. And so on this issue, it came, if there were no genders at all, but I was still as me and you or you, I'm pretty sure it would be me leading and you being supportive. Fair.
Yeah.
So that, solves a lot of the problem. And I was saying, well, the challenge is the kids, if you can tell who's leading by obeying. If you're obeying somebody, that's the leader. If you're not obeying people, but they're obeying you, obey feels like a harsh word, but pick a word you want: follow, support, respect, do. It's fine. But that was kind of the conversation. And that a lot of this, and then someone posted about going in Sunday school. They have, I think, teach Sunday school, kids come in and they won't obey or follow or do much of anything. So they're probably used to leading at home, getting their way. And eventually that's a problem, because if they have kids and they're used to getting their way, how are they suddenly going to know how to let the kids drive things? And kids are not qualified. Never. Like, not even the geniuses are not. I'm telling you, little MacArthur or Colin Powell had to first learn to just submit to the game. Mozart had to learn to submit to the scale. He had to learn the scale before he could do all his creative stuff. That's just the nature of the game.
I was thinking about what you were saying about the Sunday school, and I was hearing in my head, you all heard a kid say, "You're not my mama," or "You're not my daddy." Like, you're an adult, I admit that, but you can't do anything. And sadly, our cultures kind of put everybody on guard about what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
And as a Sunday school teacher, as any kind of leader in a child's life. And so we do have to, there are boundaries, of course, but you are still the adult. You are still the leader.
And that's a good thing to reframe, you know, for a kid. So you're not my mama. Is that what they say?
Yeah. Or daddy.
I've had that and I reframed it a different way with a kid, but I would suggest something like, I'm not your mom, but she's also not here. And I am the teacher, right? So I'm not your mama, but I am the teacher and you're the student. That's how that works. Now, if you'd rather be with your mama, well, we try to figure out how to arrange that. So your mama can be your mama and you can be with your mama. But when you're in my class, in this situation, I'm not your mama, but your mom's not here and I am the teacher and we're all going to cooperate doing the things we want to do. And we're going to do that because I'm leading and we're going to do the lesson. We're going to do this, and we're going to get a snack. And this is how we do it. We all learn to cooperate. Can I get a witness? Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So let's see. Heather wrote, Patrick said they're expecting their 12. Congratulations.
Wow, guys.
We knew you had 11.
Fantastic.
So, well, it is fantastic, but it's also important to take deep breaths on those things. But if you manage the home, it should work. So that threw back in also how to have teenagers to follow rules and respect parents, even though they don't like the rules. So yeah, let's think about that for a second. She added, do you advise them for teenagers, young adults in the young 20s, how to respect them as adults and have a good relationship with them? Yeah. So those are all great questions. So let me back up. And the question was, how do you get teenagers, right? So when you're fiddling with teenagers, as you parent, trying to think of a grid here, as the grid moves up, what's happening is they're getting older, and so you give them basically more responsibility and freedom, and you back off because you're moving really in a stage to, you know, a dictator when they're little. And you know, I'm sorry, we're going to change your diaper. That's dictator. Don't want the diaper change. But as it moves up, you're going to move to more of a coaching mode. Then you move to an advising mode, and then you move into with adult kids more of your on call. And this is a problem parents often have. They're great with 9-year-olds, but they keep treating their 14 or 15-year-olds like they're 9. So they're highly controlling, highly directive. And I've not found that to be wise. What you're wanting to do is let kids learn how to handle their freedom. And it's going to be some challenges because they're going to make some mistakes. They're going to goof up. I remember when Tripp was a teen, I told him one day, this was very painful on me. She's like 12 or 13. He may have been 14, trying to think where he was in Scouts. So I said to him, he was talking about friends. He'd done in Friends or something with friends. And I said, you know, I've kind of sort of an expert on some of that relationship stuff. I've written a book on it, some other stuff. I have some ideas that might help you. And he nodded. And I said, I mean, all you need to do is ask, and I'd give you some ideas if you would like some help with friends. And he nodded. And I said, well, so what I'm trying to say is like right now, if you were to ask me and say, hey, Dad, what kind of ideas do you have about how to improve my friendships? I have some. And he just nodded. And so I let it go. And then 2 weeks later, we're out in a boat together fishing for Merit Badge and Scouts. And he said, you know, Dad, you mentioned something about friendships 2 weeks ago. I'd like to hear it. So a lot of the movement with teens is invitation. You invite them. You want them to experience some of their struggles so you can help them with it. If you don't teach them at home, God will take them on a field trip someday in the future. But there's a constant movement away from you being highly directed to being more respectful and suggestive. That doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. That doesn't mean you might not, be home.
Yeah, there's still rules.
Yeah,
still
there are rules,
boundaries,
there's
still-
stuff. But even the senior year, we changed that rule. Once you turn 18, you don't have a curfew in our home. None of them did. And that may sound scary. I don't know, but our thought was, gosh, when they leave, they're not gonna have a curfew. I'd rather see how they handle it now than later. So as a result, they all stayed out one night. They had to let us know where they were. But they stayed out. And after one or two times, I don't even remember more, one or two times they stayed out all night or somewhere or whatever, no curfew, came in really late. And they all pretty much went, whew, I was tired that next day, forget that. So they came on home, maybe not exactly, at the time they used to have, but it really empowered them to be responsible for their own lives. So they don't blame us. One of the things we do if we over control our kids, they're just going to blame us. And so what we're trying to do is teach them principles and guide them and help them. But as they grow, you give them more responsibility. So more consequences because they're older, it's responsibility, but more freedom. And so it moves to more inviting, to coaching, to advising, to on call, for emergencies.
Well, and especially once they are really out of the home. And I don't mean out of the home, but you're still paying for this, that, or the other. If you're still paying for stuff, that's fine. You got to figure that out. I would advise you to think of a deadline, like by the time they're X age, we're not paying, we're not supporting the cell phone bill or car insurance or whatever it might be, because I know a lot of parents take that on for quite a while. But yeah, so once they're totally on their own, they are on their own, and that might be 18 or that might be 25. I don't know. But then you really are, it's invitation. I would like to say something. Would you like to hear it, or however you want to do it?
So Heather also added perfect. In the social media world, how to raise teenagers, have good relationships with parents. What I just shared is really the stuff about parents. Social media is its own trickery, just like anything. What we found is we'd have some boundaries. Sometimes they'd help us. And it's not like just social media, it's like pornography, things like that. So I remember one of our kids, there are different stories, some I can't tell, but what happened was, I remember finding cache in the computer of like swimsuit edition pictures. And so I called the boy in and I showed him, and he was mortified because he didn't understand computers don't erase things by themselves. Oftentimes they don't erase things when you want to erase them. But I showed it that, and we had an interesting talk. I wasn't judgmental or down on him. I said, I get it, I understand. We talked about that sort of stuff. But what honestly happened was I said, you've got to decide for yourself what you're going to do. This is going to be on your life. Do you want to get enslaved to this stuff, and this is what your life's about, or do you want to accomplish something a little bigger? And after that, he made a decision and didn't have a problem. Others had more problems, but they would respond. We'd say, would you like Covenant Eyes or whatever you used back then?
Yeah,
So we actually put something on there. Yeah.
What are they called?
I don't know. Sure.
Right.
Filters or whatever. So they have those kind of things too. But in that social media stuff, I would say you as a parent have the opportunity to debrief it, to try to understand, what's up with that? Why are we doing that? There are some other boundaries you can create. You do on dating, etc. So there may be some social media things that you're just not mature enough for it yet. Sorry, spending all that time. And obviously, if they're getting stuff done that they need to be doing, and then social media is on their own dime, so to speak, then that's all fine. I mean, that's all what it is. But they've got to figure out how involved our kids. virtually none of them are engaged in social media. Well, Laura
as
is a
adults,
bit, yeah. In fact, we've had a little conflict that we couldn't post grandchildren pictures, to our friends or other stuff because they don't want the kids having a social history, footprint, biography online of different things. So we have to be respectful of that. The relationships with kids is tricky, but it's sort of the same thing. And the more you approach the kids with some respect but honesty, the better off it is. And so I think that's what we've tried to do. Anything you can own that you did wrong is great. But as they grow, learning to interact, I'd like to talk to my kids a lot more, but they're doing life, they're busy, and they're doing well. And we do talk. And I'll shoot them a text every now and then and say, hey, we hadn't talked in a while. Let's talk. Did that to a son. And we talked for 2 hours. But they wouldn't think to initiate because they're busy. I think in the 30s, they come back around. The 20s, they're gone. Just like teens,
They have little kids. And
I will say this about your teens. One trick that I learned that I found to be effective is if you'll go in at the end of the day and lay on the bed and hang out, they're ready to debrief about the day. What was the day like? What's going on, etc. And they'll open up and talk. Their friends are going to bed or getting their homework done. They're getting off of things, or maybe at some point you have to say, yeah, we cut this off, bedtime. But if you hang out a little bit at the end of day, they're ready to kind of debrief it, at least commonly. So you might give that piece a try as well. How to have teenagers follow the rules and respect parents even though they don't like the rules. Yeah, so your teenage years are your second chance, because chances are if your teenagers don't like the rules and are fighting against them, they were doing that earlier too. It's just the rules were littler and they couldn't run away or yell at you or whatever they do. But with all of them, what I would recommend, if you're trying to regroup on that, it's your second chance, you're figuring out. The nature of the rules is a big deal. So like if you have a lot of them, it's massive, like the Old Testament, 660, the Pharisees, 660, whatever it was, rules, 640. So they got all these rules to follow. And if you have too many rules, it gets kind of crazy. But the trick, I think, with most kids, younger or older, is I would settle in if there's an issue on one rule. What is the one rule that this is the rule right now? This is it. Like I said earlier, your life stops till you write this essay. So whatever your one rule is, then in figuring that out, since people do things to feel good, if they obey that rule, why will they feel good? Is there a payoff? That'd be the carrot. And if they disobey the rule, they're not going to feel good. So knowing they're not disobeying the rule makes you feel good. You're not in trouble. Like when a police car drives past you and doesn't stop you, you feel good. Woo. Not because you got rewarded, but because you didn't get in trouble. So you figure out kind of that carrot and that stick thing and say, here's the game on this rule. The reason I've found this to be helpful is that if you can go ahead and win on that rule, not fighting about all of them, the moment you do that, the game changes, because at that point, and they know that they can follow. Now, there's another piece to rules in general, and that is they need to make sense. So there may be something with your kids that it doesn't make sense. So I don't know what we're exactly talking about. Might be a rule about cleaning their room. Well, if it's their room, how much control do you want over that? You may want a lot, maybe a safety issue. I don't know. But understanding it, kind of that way, making sure, do they really know what your expectation is? Do they really know the reasoning behind it? Say, here's why we do it this way. This is why this game works this way. Well, I don't like that rule. I have to call you when I get to another city when I'm traveling. And you go, yeah, but here's the game. We love you. We're worried about you. We just want to know. We want to sleep at night. It's a dangerous world. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. So just letting us know, doesn't that make sense? Now it's a little one, but I've heard of it. So that might be a bit to get you started. If you have any of our material, I think you might even get it for free. I can't remember, but this book behind my shoulder here, can't read it. The Absolute Quickest Way to Help Your Child Change has in there a questions format where you can go through any issue about behavior you want and try to figure it out and set up a game plan. So you might find that helpful as well. Anything you want to add to all that?
Just attitude seemed to be involved in that question also. And we tend to think of rules for do's and don'ts about bedtimes and clean rooms and doing your homework and all, but I just address that about a kid's attitude, whatever age they are.
Yeah, so all of us have stinky attitudes from time to time, don't we?
Yep.
So there's that. So, somehow you've got to get your mind, the rule that you think your child should respect you, and you need to throw that away because there's no cosmic law that says your child should respect you, your teen. It's not written in the cosmos anywhere. If you'd like to, you can think, I prefer it. I'd like it. God, that'd be nice if they did. But you can also work that both ways. So you want some mutual kind of respect going on in the game. We had some of that stuff. We had stuff that happened that they were grumpy about or bad attitude, etc. Might call them out on it. But also, I think I downplayed attitude. So sometimes, if they had a project to do, I remember math type things, I don't mind you not liking it, being upset. I just don't want you disturbing the rest of us. Like, you can have a bad attitude, but don't be noisy about it. I don't like to sleep. You don't have to sleep. Just stay on your bed. Well, I don't like that, whatever, so, but see, here's how we thought. Look, they've got to learn to fix their attitude themselves. And we a lot of times think we have to fix it. They've got to learn how to self-soothe, self-comfort, get a grip, because that's part of the maturation process. And honestly, if you could just teach anyone one thing, just teach them this. Are my thoughts useful to me? What I'm thinking right now, is it useful? Could be anxiety, depression, whatever. But usually we stop and we look at our thoughts and go, is this really helpful? Is me thinking this way a helpful thing? It tends to instantly call into question that thought. And then your brain kind of knows, well, that's not helpful. And I'm all about helpful. And you might find a better thought, So it's tricky, but it's very much the same things. They move to adults, they're functioning like other human beings. And so how do you solve or work with dispositions or whatever with other human beings? You go to them, you find out what's going on, you find out what you can apologize for, you share with them honestly, use language like, when you do this, it makes me feel. That sounds less attacky. So if you tell your kids that, look, when you have this fit, it makes me feel like whatever it is, you're going to, get a cabin and build bombs, mail them to people. I don't know. But whatever's going on in you, I'd shoot straight with them. And that's a big thing. There's a great power. All of our mental health is about telling the truth. And a lot of times we don't tell the truth to each other or ourselves. So the more truth you tell, the healthier you are. The more you lie to yourself and others, the sicker you are mentally. So schizophrenics have a whole imaginary world, the total lie that they live in. Total is overstatement, but that's the idea. And so the more you can tell the truth to your kids, tell the truth to yourself, the better off you are. But, these kids, and this is what I want to try to stress, they're on, just like all people, we're all on loan to each other. We don't own each other. We're not in the business of controlling each other. We're on loan. And as they age and mature, there's a cooperation. And maybe they don't come around and maybe they do. I would add this. I think it's very important to try to not have a favorite child, to love them all, to hug them in groups, to be fair across the board, but to figure out what you love uniquely about each, because that influences us. But as soon as in system dynamics and family therapy, as soon as you have a favored child, that means there's an unfavored. Now we're like a mobile over a baby's bed. You pull down one and it wangles, or whatever the word is. And so what happens is it creates conflict and frustration, bitterness, and all kinds of stuff. And so that's part of the game, part of figuring out how. I would just tell myself, I love your mother more than I love y'all. Sorry. I love all y'all the same. Great. She's sticking with me. And I chose. There's a choosing. Y'all, God popped you into our world. So I gotta love you. And that sounds harsher than it is. But I've even told our adult kids, it's kind of funny. I said, y'all are tickling me. I think I said it this trip too. And said how? I said, y'all act like you act like you love your children more than we love you. Like it's a weird, funny thing. Like, really? Do you really think you love your children more than we loved you? Because if you do, I'm going to suggest you're mistaken. But that's me. What do you think? So let's see. What other questions? Whew, I got to get going. Teenagers, Switzerland. We have a subject called Nature Society, in which you can choose the subjects you want to teach. How would you organize such lessons? We read books and visit museums. How else? Yeah. So when you organize these things, anything, you want to begin with the end in mind. So like, what do you want the student to know by the time they're through with it? You may just say, I want them exposed to general things, but the clearer you get about what you want them to learn, that almost sets in motion for you to write it. And if you'll think of it that way, or organize it. So I want them to really understand, I'll make up something. I want them to understand the endocrine system. Let's be, really weird. So in understanding that, so by the time they get through, what does that mean to understand? Well, they understand, they could articulate, they could discuss it, they get how these things interact and work and what's important. Okay, great. So overall, we need to know what hormones are, right? And what the endocrine system is. Like, what is this thing up to in our body? And then I would go, what are the major categories? And then what are the subcategories of the major categories? And then I would have a section about why it matters. So and the way I'm thinking is I figure out what I want. I work from the larger understanding of the pieces to some refinement in there. And for me, it's always, what do we do with it? Why is this a thing to know? Why is this good? Memorizing the capitals of America. I don't know any reason you need to know that, but it's good practice for your brain. It's good mental exercise, and it makes you great at Trivial Pursuit and Jeopardy or something. I don't know. Come up with some reasons. Got anything to add on that?
I think that beginning with the end in mind, even, and I didn't quite understand what she's saying there, but just with anything, whether it's your schooling with your children, or anything you want them to have accomplished or not accomplished, learn by the time they leave your home. Maybe you have some things like, I want them to learn how to cook. I want them to learn how to garden. I want them to learn how to sew. It could be anything. So then you kind of plan that out, and along with your academics, and go and work backwards. Okay. By this age, I would like them to have done X, Y, or Z. And so once you do that, starting with the end in mind, it will lay out that pattern for you.
Yeah. By 15, they know this. By 14, they know this, et cetera, et cetera. It's also, as I look at this, society, so that gets trickier. So some of these controversial things that could be society. On those subjects, I really would stress knowing both sides of anything. Because if you know both sides, you're ready for the real discussion. A lot of people, what we find now is everybody lives in their little news bubble and they only listen to certain things. They don't know both sides. We have this whole thing going on right now with Hamas and Israel, and there's not a real conversation of real facts involved. And don't misguess what I'm thinking. What I'm saying is I can engage in a good conversation with people because I have a fair idea of both sides. And that makes me even stronger on the view, or if I take a side of things. And it could be anything, if it's a controversial subject like abortion, do you really know the arguments for abortion, the arguments against abortion? What's that game about? And so some of this would be laying out one of the end in mine is that they would be articulate or informed about both sides of the discussion. Because even when you come out on a side, you'll know much clearer why. It's not just, oh, I believe because mom and dad said it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Somebody from California, bless their heart. How do you, I'm just teasing. Do you have tips to help kids memorize? My son's 7, is low auditory processing, maybe dyslexic auditory, hard time memorizing things like continents. Yeah, so there are a couple of things to talk about memory. One, we have a memory course you can get. I think it's like $14 or something. I can't remember. That sounds right. If you buy it alone. And it's, I used to teach memorization in college, part of how I paid for school. And so the course itself will go through things would be helpful at that age. You'd have to help a 7-year-old. But I will tell you this. So in dyslexia, so Jody's dyslexic, her dad, brothers, etc. And what you're trying to do is get someone to associate what they're trying to remember with something they know. Okay. So what you're doing is figuring out, what does my son know? If I had a real example, if you want to type it in there, I'll give you an example. But I remember talking to Jody's dad, Donald. He said, I can never keep AM and PM straight. Somehow that came up. And I thought about it a little bit, and I went back to him. I said, Donald, it seems to me that AM is the morning and PM is the night, and A comes before P. So A is the first one letter. So that's morning, the way we commonly think about it in the West. And the P is after morning, noon onward. So that's night. And it cured it. So what I was doing, I was taking something new and figuring out a way to connect it. So if we're trying to learn a continents thing, your 7-year-old may know about ants, on the ground, ants. And then there's Antarctica. And if he were to imagine a bunch of snow ants out there throwing snowballs at each other, he has a little memory click that can put it in enough review, you don't use it anymore. So he can remember Antarctica. You mentioned continents.
You could form a whole storyline with the continents.
Well, you could do that. I connecting them each separately would be good. Put them all together too if they need to memorize them all. That's great. What are other continents? Is Europe a continent? Because you got Europe. I mean, I don't know it. I'm with him. Africa. Now, so Africa, maybe he gets that one, maybe he doesn't. But it could be the sound of it, or it could be what it's about. So Africa, you could ask him what it sounds like. And it might be like afraid. So Africa starts with that F sound. And Africa has lions. And so Africa, afraid, lions, all those associations. What do you like?
Yeah, no, that's good.
I'm making it up. But that's the way our memory works. And so when we cooperate with the way it works, it's better. It's obvious, visual, unusual helps. He can picture things, but
songs.
Yeah, I go through all that. Songs. Absolutely. I learned the Greek alphabet going to college. A friend and I were driving down, we're joining a fraternity, and we had to know it before we got there. So we made up a song about the Greek alphabet to the tune of Delta Dawn. Back then was a hit. So there's that stuff. What does that? So I hope that's helpful. Let's see. Jenny, challenge with work memory because it causes cognitive overload. For our kids, quiet environment works. For myself, noise canceling headphones. Yeah, environment, the noise is a bit of the problem. so they can get overloaded. Sometimes that's a matter of switching subjects faster. So you might, with ADHD and neurodivergent issues and cognitive overload, about 25 minutes and a 5-minute break, even on the same subject, probably helps the tiredness of the brain or the focus. But all this is start of learning too. So you have to, there are ways you have to learn, to teach yourself, figure it out. And that's some of the trick with dyslexia in particular. I think dyslexia is really about a different filing system than we're used to. And if kids will figure out their own way to file things in their head, they do fine. So it's that's part of the trick.
Another little trick.
Can you remind us? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Well, just teaching somebody else what you've just learned, whether it's your stuffed animals or your dog, if it's, that reinforces it in your head also.
I'll just give you a direct address right now. And yeah. So someone asked where to send questions. You can contact us. Everything's here, independent homeschool.com. So there's in there how to, it probably has support, or maybe one to me, Dr. Fred at Independent Homeschool. It's not in my mind right now. But Africa is. But you from there, you can send us questions, address things, find materials, all kinds of stuff. And, we'll be adding to it as well. Thank you so much. Let's see. So funny you mentioned AM PM. We were just covering this. We'll try to use your memory hook.
There
Right.
you go.
Yeah. So it's thing. We come up with others. AM and PM could you can figure it out.
I think the easiest is A comes first.
How'd you deal with low energy when your kids are not yet independent learners? Low energy in us, I guess. How do we not get exhausted? Well, what you're wanting to do for energy, this is kind of important. You want to, first of all, you want to develop a system, a process, because if look, at this time we do this, and at this time we do this, and at this time we do this, we have a curriculum, what we're doing next. Here's what happens. If you'll follow that, that's how it works. Just like a recipe, do this step, this step. It takes away decision making. And what exhausts us more than anything, we only make so many decisions in a day. Some of us can make a lot. I can make a lot of decisions in a day, but I can eventually run out. Jody doesn't like to make near as many, right? But when you have a process of when we're working on things and we're trying to get to, you don't have to think about it. And already your energy's better. Second, you need to put breaks in there, and even for you somehow, so you can get some energy back. So Jody would organize all the kids' naps and quiet time to be at the same time. We weren't mixing it up. So when we had babies, so the baby has a sleep time, let's say in the afternoon. Well, this is all of us are, what do you call it?
Quiet time.
She called it quiet time. And that gives her a chance to close her eyes or work on something else or change what she's working on that can re-energize her. So that's part of the key. The other key is learning to get everybody in bed at the same time. And when I say same time, that's not fair, because as they're older, we would always give them later bedtimes. But basically having a consistent evening routine where everybody's in bed, we're not negotiating, we're not getting out all night, we're not doing all that stuff. It allows you to settle down, enjoy an evening together, and get some sleep. Because if you don't sleep, that's a problem. All of our kids slept through the night from 5 weeks on, because we had people that kind of showed us how, and then we studied and figured out some more. The sooner you can get babies and elders or whatever on a sleep game plan, or a stay in your bed game plan, the more sleep you can get. And that sleep is going to be intimate to that. And then otherwise, you probably need to eat some real food, So if food is like cooked or store-bought or in a package, or it can last on a shelf for a year, that's probably not like living food. So getting some actual living nutrition in you. I'm not exactly saying eat raw animals or something, but the vegetable kind of world is part of where that happens because your body needs that nutrition. Last thing I'd say about energy, it's a lot of it's about mindset too. So, we get tired because we can get frustrated or we don't have an understanding. I'll give you an example. If you just get in your mind what you're trying to do is model something to your children about energy and doing things you don't feel like doing because it's modeling and they're going to catch on to that, that'll give you energy because you need to be an example to them. Just like when there's something bad happens and you, because of your mindset, don't want to panic because you don't want to create panic in the kids, you're modeling to them that you can restrain and get somewhere. So playing around with things that give you energy in your thoughts or what you're trying to do with your kids, those are probably helpful to energize you as well. But a lot of this is, look, we have energy, we burn it, we recharge, we burn it, we recharge. So what you need to do is figure out, how do I get the recharge stuff in there as well? That was a long answer, but
No, I think
I have a lot more thoughts about it.
yeah, it's a good question and good answer.
Oh, you're just playing favorites. Let's see. Also, in our home, what takes a lot of my energy is lack of kids' discipline. We're working on obedience and discipline in our home now. Yeah, and somebody said, yeah, some real food. Yeah, so I think that's right. It's a whole different game than you say, okay, time for bath. And your child says, no, I'm not bathing. You can't make me. And then they run around, run the neighbors and say, mom's beating me. And whatever they do. That takes a lot of energy compared to, yes, ma'am. So one of the things in discipline, especially when they're younger, is I think you want to practice. You want to run that play till you get it right, like we used to say in American football, or I did growing up. So what that means is you actually want to practice obedience. I remember that with Trip when he was young. He went and went to get his shoes. I said, go get your shoes. We're leaving. So he went back there. What was he, 3 or 4? I don't care. And he goes back to get his shoes. And on the way back or two, he saw his dinosaurs. And so he started playing with the dinosaurs. And then I had to go get him. Okay. So that's not going to work long haul. So what I did is I said, all right, let's practice this. I think we had to go somewhere, but we did it later. Let's practice this. I say, get your shoes. And here's what I'm wanting. I want you to go get your shoes and run back to me. And in fact, I'm going to say how long it takes. Let's time it. And so he goes, run back, come back. I don't know if I exactly did this, but something close. And I said, that's good. Now let's do it again. See if you improve your time. So go put your shoes back, come back in here. And we're looking around and, oh, nice bird outside. And go get your shoes. And then he goes, gets the shoes, and you practice it 2 or 3 times and they know exactly what you want and they know they can do it. So some of this is practice, like, okay, time for school. Well, what do we want them to do? Yes, ma'am, or sir, or whatever. That's a Southernism.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, bold hair, commandant, whatever you do. Okay. So, and doing that over and over a few times to get it practiced. If it's the energy of how do we grade your writing, what I want you to do is I want you to take your writing, go into this other room or the garage, and read it out loud and correct anything, and then hand it to me. And then I'm going to mark it up, and then you're going to tweak anything that you need to tweak on those every other lines. Okay. And so let's practice this. So explain it to me, explain it. And then let's try it. So go in there and you do it, and we practice it. Sometimes we'd write up these processes on the refrigerator for a little bit. Wouldn't stay up there forever, but these are the steps. Here's the recipe. And there's more to it, with human motivation and behavior. But my experience, a lot of times the kids don't know what we want. Honestly, you think they should, but they don't. Like cleaning up rooms, they have no idea what that means. And it takes them some time to even understand. to understand first, nothing's on the floor. Let's just get that one down and we'll work on something else later. What do you want to add to all that?
Yeah, it sounds like it does take time at the front end, but that we started out that conversation with energy, physical and emotional, mental energy. And the more you have, they know what to do and they do it because you've trained them, which is our job. The easier it will be. Not perfect. Nobody, there are going to be bad days. There's going to be,
Exactly.
but the more like, this is what we do at our home. This is how we expect you to behave and to act and to do. And it's kind of routine and it's kind of systemetized. The easier
They figure it out.
it will be on you as a parent.
It's going to make going in the military much easier for them too, because they'll, the first time you go to basic and you say, "You're not my mama," they actually have a different response. They go, "I am your mama. I'm your daddy. I'm everything. This is all you got." And guess what you're fixing to learn to do? One, make your bed. If you learned it at home, good, but you didn't learn it like I'm about to teach you. And they learn it. So obviously kids can learn these things. It's just a matter of motivation.
And we've said it before too. That means you need to spend some time, you and your spouse, decide what is it that we do want.
Yeah.
How do we want our kids to behave? What do we want them to learn? How do we want them to interact with each other? You've got to figure out some things and then what's my game plan? Okay. Yes. I want them all to make up their bed in the morning. Well, then what's your game plan on training them?
But again, I just start with one thing. I wouldn't try to do all that stuff. That's why you don't get it done. Get one thing and conquer it.
And then move.
And that'll move energy in your system. Then another thing, conquer it.
Yeah.
We start on time. Great. That's great. We know how to clean our room. Great. Or we know how to clean the den or whatever it is.
Potty.
Clean the potty or go to potty.
Train them to.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, and then you move on to the next thing.
all right. All right. So good time. We kept you a little late. Hope this is helpful. If you want more information, go to independenthomeschool.com. You can get some free videos and other goodies there. And we're here best we can every week. Please send this along to other people if you find it helpful. Invite them to look at things. Put comments in there. If you have a comment you like, put where it is in the video, the timestamp.
Oh, that's helpful.
And then you can, then that shows people where to go for something, how to get energy. Put that. I probably should do it, but I have stuff to do.
I like it when people send me that and then I know exactly where to go.
All right.